Welcome to GODSpeed, where truth meets life in under 10 minutes. I'm AK, and this is hope for your journey.
What's your least favorite chore? And one that feels insignificant, inconvenient, and maybe even beneath you. It might be the task you need the most this week, because often the work that feels small reveals the biggest truth about who you are and who you're becoming. Jesus is with all of his disciples. These are the men who have followed him for years and who know him best. And they're getting ready to have what will be their final meal together. Jesus uses this dinner to leave an eternal example. Let's jump into the story. This comes from John chapter 13, verses 5 through 7 and 12 through 17. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with a towel that was wrapped around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus replied, "You do not realize now what I am doing, but later you will understand." When he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. "Do you understand what I have done for you?" he asked them. "You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. Very truly I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them." Service is the example and the point. Let's look at 3 observations from this moment that can reorient our view of self and how we act towards others. First, a question. Have you allowed yourself to become too good for certain work? Let me give some historical context. In Jesus' time, foot washing was the absolute lowest task, reserved for the lowest slave in the household. Think about it. There were no sneakers, no paved roads. People wore sandals and walked nearly everywhere on dusty, dirty roads. By the time you arrived somewhere, even if you were showered and clean and smelling good, your feet were filthy. Someone had to wash them, and that someone was always the person with the least status, the least power, the least importance. I imagine all the disciples looking around, not wanting to do it. They'd already been caught before arguing about who's the greatest among them. And here's Jesus, their teacher, their Lord, taking the lead role in the most humble task. Jesus didn't talk about humility. He demonstrated it. He didn't send someone else or choose someone to wash feet while he supervised. He got up, took off his robe, put a towel around his waist, and did the work himself. I remember when I was an intern in college doing manual work, putting letters in envelopes, organizing crates, counting t-shirts, and one day I was delaying a task because of how monotonous it was. And I went down eventually to do it, and I saw there the director of the region who was working on it. Not to make me feel bad, but to show that the task wasn't even beneath him. His title qualified him to never do it, but he chose to. And that moment stuck with me. He could have been doing 100 more things that seemed more important or more valuable, but he demonstrated for me that no work is beneath you when it's time for it to be done. And the question is, what makes us think we are too good or too important for certain work? Are you positioning yourself away from the menial, the inconvenient, the uncomfortable? Because Jesus shows us that leadership isn't all about being high, but being an example and willingness to go low. Which leads us to the next observation. Service done willingly is beautiful. Here's something remarkable about Jesus. He knew who he was. He knew he was a big deal. In the passage, it tells us he already knew the authority that he was given, fully aware of his identity, power, and position. And even from that secure, lofty place, he chose to serve. Service isn't transactional. It's not, I'll wash your feet so you owe me. It says, I'll wash your feet because serving you matters and that you matter to me. Service is always available. It doesn't require a title, money, or expertise. You don't need permission to serve. You don't need credentials to be caring. You don't need a platform to meet someone's needs. Service is the most accessible yet powerful way to make a difference. And it's always within your reach. And then finally, Jesus ends with a promise of a blessing. He says, now that you know these things, God will bless you for doing them. Not just agreeing with them, not for thinking about them, but for doing them. I came across this really powerful quote from Zig Ziglar. It says, if you help enough people get what they want, you can have everything you want. So if you run a business or fundraise for charity or even just want more friends, how can you serve people? And then there's another by Jim Rohn that says it differently. He says, I only want something at the service of others, not the expense of others, but at the service of them. It shows that when you love people well, there's a benefit for you. It may not always be material, but it is something still as tangible that changes you. There's a blessing that comes with service. A blessing you can only receive when you do the work, when you humble yourself, when you take on the roles and opportunities that occasionally feel beneath you, when you serve without needing the recognition or reward to be attached to it. God desires hearts that are humble, that are willing to serve our fellow women and men. It's a mindset shift. Not just knowing we should serve, but becoming the people who look for opportunities to, who see needs and step in, who take the towel and their bucket and just go to work. And so I'm not sure what you've been avoiding because it feels too small or too inconvenient, but that might be exactly where you're needed to lead this week. Not by standing above others, but by kneeling beside them. Not by demanding service, but by offering it. The lead role isn't always the one everyone sees, but it's the one everyone is ultimately impacted by. God, give me a heart that is humble enough to honor and serve my neighbor. Help me see that love looks like service. Amen.
I will always love you how I do. Let go of a prayer for you, just a sweet word